Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing, for the third time, I actually have an excuse this time because I finally captured footage, Super Mario 64 DS for the, DS. Seriously, Nintendo, what is with your titles? I mean, okay, it makes sense from a marketing standpoint. You are playing Super Mario 64, remade from the ground up on the DS. However, to someone who's never played a video game before, that just sounds like random garbage. Like, it's the kind of stuff that you would expect to see on a computer program, where you type in a bunch of letters, dash, stuff like that, and then it makes something happen. Regardless of this game's absolutely horrendous title, Super Mario 64 is the first video game that truly embraced what we call modern sandbox design. Not only was it the first video game to embrace analog control via the Nintendo 64 control stick, thus preventing the need for a run button, Super Mario 64 basically told players your way, your pattern of doing things. In fact, the first level, if you want to call it that, isn't even properly considered a level. It's Peach's courtyard. You run around, there's no music, just the sound of the birds chirping and some wind flying through the trees. There's no timer, thank goodness. And you can just take your sweet time even going into the castle itself. And then you can even play the levels out of order, and to a certain extent, you can skip them altogether if you don't like them. While Super Mario 64 may have some dated out ideas by 2018 standards, and heck, even by the time this game came out, there were certain elements of it that just felt rocky. Certain polygonal shapes just kind of felt like hastily slopped together bits of pixels. But overall, you couldn't really argue that Super Mario 64 did not feel like a game that felt like a dance, really. The way the controls made it fun to just run around and jump. Say what you will about the sometimes wonky camera that just did not want to do what you wanted it to do. Say what you will about the graphics being kind of a mess sometimes. I mean, have you seen what Bowser used to look like? Super Mario 64 was a fun game that pushed the boundaries of the exploration platformer genre. Now, how is Super Mario 64 going to improve on this when it comes to the Nintendo DS? Well, it helped that this was a launch title, so therefore it gave Nintendo the incentive to say, okay, we've got this brand new handheld system that has the graphical power of a Nintendo 64. So, we'll remake the very first Nintendo 64 game ever, and show that the DS is capable of these types of graphics, when the Game Boy Advance's horsepower is more akin to the Super Nintendo. So, you could say this was technically a tech demo of sorts for the DS. And for the most part, it paid off. The graphics have received a major overhaul, so that while it's still recognizable as a Super Mario 64 remake, it still feels like everything's been given the most up-to-date model designs, and they look like how they've appeared in recent GameCube appearances. A lot of the textures have been redone. Ramps that were too narrow are now wider. This is far from a port. Now, if you thought the debate between whether Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was a port or not, you should have seen the debate that came around whenever Nintendo would have released a remake nowadays. Wind Waker HD comes out, oh, that's just a lazy port. This was the exact opposite of a lazy port. In fact, I wouldn't even call it that. I would say this is more of a from-the-ground-up reimagining of a classic. That's not to say it's without its faults, so let me start speaking frankly again from here. Every time I try to write a poetic script, it just doesn't work out for me, so let me try doing this naturally. Super Mario 64 was founded on the principle of analog control and giving the player the control over Mario's speed and how the camera works. Now, let's take a moment to figure out what's missing here. We're playing this game on a DS, a system that, while it could indeed display 3D graphics, did not come with an analog stick. So, you might be wondering, well, how then are they going to address Mario being able to run versus walk? Simple! Let's bring back the run button. By doing so, the game sort of took a backwards approach to game design and went back to the very genre it was trying to evolve from. Now, I could easily forgive it if the controls were as tight as they were in, say, Super Mario 3D Land, which did have an analog circle pad, but yet still opted for a run button. But the thing is, there's another thing the DS lacks, and that's precise analog control. This game was designed with very circular, open type platforming, and the circle pad just doesn't allow for that. The game tries to overcompensate by giving you the option of moving your character with the touchscreen, but that doesn't always work either because the Nintendo 64 control stick had, I forget what it's called, I think it was something like force feedback, where you could tell how much or how little pressure you were putting onto it. Touchscreen doesn't have that. You basically are limited by your imagination, which not everyone has the same level of imagination. So the level of immersion, the level of player control is going to vary depending on who's playing this. I know of some people that love the control scheme in this game. I am not one of them. Although I can say that I am thankful that I eventually played it on a 3DS, as it didn't fix the control issues totally, but it definitely made it bearable. Playing it on the Wii U Virtual Console, though, has its pros and its cons. On one hand, it's great to have a non-clutter-filled experience on the big screen that looks significantly better than it did in 1996. But on the other hand, the Wii U has a right joystick that's used for absolutely nothing. And it would have been nice if maybe the game would have just simply made an exception, just said, hey, I know this is a Virtual Console straight emulation, but why don't we just allow the player to be able to freely manipulate the camera? Sadly, that's not the case here. You still have to press the buttons on the touchscreen if you want to manipulate. Control issues aside, Super Mario 64 DS is a very well-executed remake. Granted, it's kind of weird that you start out as Yoshi instead of Mario. Perhaps they wanted to make an allusion to Mario is missing. I don't know why, because that game is pretty awful from the footage that I've seen. Nevertheless, Yoshi works. The problem is just that he doesn't really do much to add to the core experience. Sure, he can flutter jump, which helps with some of the trickier platforming. He can eat enemies, lay them into eggs, and then toss the eggs like projectiles, which works a lot better than you think, if only because it's to make up for the game's broken controls. But then you've also got 3 additional characters. You've got, of course, Mario. I mean, why would his name be in the game if he's not going to be playable? Who performs pretty much like he did in Super Mario 64, with a new ability to inflate like a balloon when you get certain power flowers, kind of like the blimp balloon in Super Mario Galaxy 2. Then you also get Luigi and Wario, who are, in the long run, optional, but they definitely do help in rounding out the level design and ways in which you can explore the game. What this game might lack in an analog stick makes up for it in character selection. Admittedly, though, they could have gone the extra mile because Luigi's main ability from a power flower is turning invisible, which is basically the vanish cap that Mario used to have. For Wario, he can turn metallic, which is the metal cap that Mario used to have. So what, are they trying to downgrade Mario here? Is it like Mario has become less of a hero, or is this some alternate universe where Mario's powers have been sapped? Did he eat a poison mushroom before he got the invitation? Was Peach's letter to receive cake actually poison? I know this is far-fetched speculation, but if you're going to have a main character in a game, generally you want that character to be able to stand out in some way. And while you can say, well, Paul, Mario's the only one who can wall jump, that's just a small part of the game. Once you get Luigi, it's pretty hard to want to go back to Mario. Not only can he run across water, but he has this amazing backflip that makes some of the tougher platforming challenges over in seconds because he can bypass obstacles that require this incredible amount of coordination. Cool Mountain, for example. The wall jumps will work mission, you can do it without doing a single wall jump. Just have Luigi backflip off the edge, and you're good to go. I'm not saying these are bad characters. I like how the addition of new characters allows for some new mission-type structures that weren't present in the original game. Sometimes entire stars were removed for more creative solutions. For instance, Watch for Rolling Rocks involved Mario wall jumping off a random chasm in Hazy Maze Cave. Now you actually have to punch through rolling rocks with Wario. It makes more sense. Super Mario 64 suffered from the problem of having mission structures, which, while it was a cool idea in practice, oftentimes you'd get very vague hints on the mission select screen, which made it hard to figure out exactly what you had to do to get the star when the levels were so open that there could be several things you need to do. In addition to that, Super Mario 64 suffers from the very problem that Super Mario Odyssey fixed that really didn't need to be fixed at all because it was already present in Banjo-Kazooie, and that was every single time you get a star, with the odd exception of the 100 coin star, you're booted out of the level. So let's take Bob-omb Battlefield just as one example. The first mission has you running up the mountain to face the big Bob-omb. Okay, I can handle that. The second mission has you running up the mountain to race a Koopa Troopa. Then there's another mission called Big Bob-omb's Revenge, where you have to run up the mountain to face the big Bob-omb again. That's 3 times where your mission is to get to the top of a mountain. Wouldn't it have been easier if you could just, say, have a checkpoint? Mario games have had checkpoints. Even the earliest Super Mario Bros. Did. Why couldn't it have killed the developers to, say, let Mario stay in the level, but just, maybe have him go to the middle of the mountain? Something along those lines. I get that probably would have been taxing on the hardware, and I'm not saying that they should remake the game, but it's definitely something that if there's ever going to be yet another remake of Mario, they really need to work on the structure for not making the game so repetitious. Okay, so I'm being unnecessarily harsh right now. What exactly is it about Super Mario 64 DS that makes me keep wanting to come back to it, no matter how many times I sell it, no matter how many times I say this game is stupid and a terrible ripoff of Super Mario 64? It's because it tries to rebuild the Super Mario 64 formula so ambitiously that it almost wants to carve an identity of itself. And that's a much more quality job than Nintendo's ever been known for just completely taking a game and reimagining it. Generally speaking, modern remakes have had them, say, spruce up the graphics, fix a couple of problemsome areas. This game, they just said every facet of the game is going to be rethought of, readjusted, repainted, recontrolled, everything. Just upending the table. That phrase that apparently Miyamoto uses all the time has never been more appropriate here. Of course, the question then becomes, normally when you play a Nintendo remake, you're wondering if it's worth it to double dip on the original or not. In which case, I would say this is the rare case when I wouldn't be able to necessarily say that you should get one over the other. In fact, I would say that both versions have their own significant strengths and weaknesses so much that I might eventually consider going and reviewing the original for the first time because they feel like vastly different experiences, despite being based on one game. Super Mario 64 DS has the advantage of taking 4 characters, making it fun to run around and jump, and while the controls don't execute it very well, if you were to take the game on its own merits and plop it in a better controller, this would be a masterpiece. It would only need the most minor of tweaks to make it up to par with modern standards, and you'd have an outstanding Mario classic that actually has a chance to hold its own with Super Mario Odyssey. Super Mario 64, the original game, it was definitely easier to control, and it has the historical legacy, but its graphics and camera haven't aged very well, and there definitely feels like there were some parts of the game that were hastily put together without much thought. It's kind of unfortunate that as of now there isn't a Super Mario 64 Definitive Edition like Hyrule Warriors had, where you could have the elements of both this game and Super Mario 64 in one package. Don't lie to me. Tell me that would be an amazing idea, to have this type of graphics with these many characters, but yet still feel like it has the innovation of Super Mario 64. It'd be a huge hit, albeit it'd probably get a lot of backlash from the community for, well, being yet another rehash rather than Nintendo making another Mario game. But you know what? Another Mario game is better than another lazy Mario spin-off game. I think we can all agree on that one. So, with that, I want to say that I challenge you to try to find both versions if you can. You can get both of them on the Wii U Virtual Console, and it's really easy to save your game because not only were the original games both very forgiving as far as giving you extra lives and letting you save nearly any time you wanted, but on the Wii U Virtual Console you can literally save anywhere, even in the middle of a cutscene. And, as I keep mentioning, you can read the original manual, albeit sideways, which is cool, because when I was a kid, I really loved reading manuals. I liked to collect manuals even for games I didn't own, because I loved instructions. I loved learning. I loved ascertaining facts. It was a lot of fun. With that, I've rambled on long enough. I think that you definitely should give Super Mario 64 DS a try. Don't try to compete to see whether this or Super Mario 64 is better, but just try to compare it on its own merits. See how it holds up as a platforming game. Just don't play it on an original DS. You are so screwed if you do that. And there's also mini-games. I totally forgot to mention that in the script. The mini-games try to take advantage of the DS's unique features. Again, this is a launch title, so of course Nintendo's going to say, well, we have to show that this is a DS game, not just a port of a 1996 game. So therefore, we're going to have to show what the DS is capable of. These are a lot of fun, but it definitely makes it harder to recommend the Wii U Virtual Console version because they're strictly single-player only. So it makes it a tough sell. But then again, you can't really fault the Wii U version for that because it's not like Nintendo could see into the future in 2004 and say, eventually this game will be remade on a platform that doesn't have local wireless connectivity. With that, thank you very much for watching. Sorry if this went a little bit longer than you expected, but seeing as this is my third review, might as well make it amazing. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you have any further questions or comments. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and don't try to bop your heads as much as Mario, Luigi, and Wario do. It'll give you a headache. Bye!